Hello and welcome. My name is Heather Doom. This is a presentation on whole language versus phonics, the great debate. For years there has been a huge debate politically, educationally, on how to teach reading. There's a lot of Americans, a lot of people across the nation who cannot read. And so there's been this huge battle on trying to figure out which is the best way to teach someone to read. So I'm going to take you through a little timeline and take you through a little presentation on how to teach someone to read and the best way. So for years they fought over whole language or should they teach phonics. So I'm going to explain both and take you through a little timeline too. Okay, so we're going to start first. So the goals of the presentation we just went through to have a better understanding of whole language, a better understanding of phonics, and then towards the end I want you to decide which is better, whole language or phonics. Let's see. First, let's see. Okay, these are my fun presentations, but I'm not sure you can see them on the video, but that's okay. We'll keep rolling. All right. So first of all, I want you to understand what literacy is. Literacy is learning how to read and write. So the ability to read and write. So if you can't read, you can't write. So like I said before, there's been a history of phonics and whole language. So when we first started out, I'd say anywhere from 400 BC to all the way up to the 1700s, there was this alphabetic method of phonics to teach. And back then there was only the elite read, and books only came to people of the upper elite or the rich. And a lot of it was biblical. So it wasn't for the sake of learning to read, it was the sake to learn good morals and character and to understand the Bible more, basically. That's why they taught reading. And then in 1800s there became this start to whole language. So it kind of started out in Germany and then it came over to America. So we kind of took a hold of it here in America to start whole language. So they forgot about it. Whole language went all the way up to the 1960s. However, in about 1955, there was a really big rise in dyslexia. So they're trying to figure out what caused dyslexia and why there was such a big rise in it. So, let's see, and then in 1961 to 1970s, they went back to phonics, and then in 1970s, they went back to whole language all the way up to 1990s. However, in the 1990s, they started they started testing for reading. And they noticed a huge decline in reading. So they, educational administrators and schools wanted to figure out why there was such a decline in reading scores and why Americans couldn't read. So first let me take you through the United States of America and what are the stats on reading. It says there is a study of literacy among 20 high-income countries, U.S. ranked 12th. Literacy has become such a serious problem in the country, 44 million adults are unable to read a simple story to their children. 50% of adults cannot read a book at an 8th grade level. That's a serious problem. 45 million are functionally illiterate and read below a 5th grade level. It's a lot of people. 44% of American adults do not read a book in a year. 6 out of 10 households do not buy a single book in a year. Okay, so how is this affecting the economy? Well, of course, so everything trickles down, everything from the top down. So in the economy, 3 out of 4 people on welfare cannot read. That's huge. 20% of Americans read below the level of needed. 20% of Americans read below the level needed to earn a living wage. 50% of unemployment between the ages of 16 to 21 cannot read well enough to be considered functionally literate. Between 46 to 51% of American adults have an income well below the poverty level. And I believe the poverty level is less last time I checked, it was about 15,000 and under to make a year for, I think that was a family of 4. Illiteracy cost American taxpayers an estimated $20 billion each year. School dropouts cost our nation $240 billion in social service expenditures and lost tax revenue. So we understand how it affects us economically. Now let's see the impact on society. This, I think, was the most alarming to me. 70% of American prisoners are illiterate. So just think, if we could teach some of those inmates to read, what they could do with their life and how they could better their life. Also, to determine how many prison beds will be needed in future years, some states actually base part of their projections on how well current elementary students are performing on reading tests. 85% of juvenile offenders have problems reading. Approximately 50% of Americans read so poorly that they are unable to perform simple tasks such as reading prescription drug labels. So basically, now you're probably thinking, well, what the heck is this whole language stuff? Well, let me explain to you. So when whole language came about, whole language is basically learning a word from its shape or from its size, and you're memorizing it like a picture. So, for example, well, first off, let me give you the definition of it. Definition of whole language: a method of teaching reading and writing that emphasizes learning whole words and phrases by encountering them in meaningful context rather than by phonics exercises. So, in layman terms, basically, whole language is considered a top-down approach where the reader constructs a personal meaning for a text based on using their prior knowledge. So, say if mom and dad, I was 4-year-old, mom and dad was at home and they always read to me, I would kind of understand that we read left to right, we turn pages, so I need to take all that in so I can learn when the teacher comes to me as a 5-6-year-old, that whole language is memorizing whole words and whole phrases. We're not separating sounds or letters. But this is really confusing for some people. So let me get back to, so here's an example. The word cat. So if I was a 5-6-year-old learning to read, I would be reading left from right. So if we had a sentence here that said, I see a cat. But if I was a child, I would know what that word was. So I would look to my teacher and say, excuse me, Mrs. Dew, what does this word say? And I would come over and I say, well, that word says cat. So so I would think about it, look at the shape. It has kind of a curvy letter here, this tall letter here, and in here there's kind of a middle letter, kind of mountain. So I would kind of memorize it. However, the problem with this is when we read, the brain is reading. Each sides of the brain have different purposes. So the left side of the brain is for reading, and the right side is for visual, memorizing things. So I'm walking along, and I see a cat. So the next time I see that sentence, I should be able to remember that shape of that word is cat. However, some people's brain will memorize it like a picture. And then what happens when you go back to read that word, the word flips in the head, in the brain, it flips, which causes dyslexia. So memorizing words with whole language can cause dyslexia, and that was a huge rise that they were seeing, but they didn't realize whole language was doing that. However, we still need whole language, and I will explain to you later about that. So let's keep moving. So people are, let's keep moving. The English okay, so advocates of whole language are saying, hey, we only have a few words in America that you need to memorize. And we're saying, well, a few words, maybe not so much, because let's see how many words are estimated. It's estimated over 1 million words in the American language. Every day we're adding new words. So that is a lot of words for a child to memorize. However, if you add a different font or uppercase or lowercase, it creates a whole new word for a child. So you could have 2 million words, 3 million words, 4 million words. This can be very confusing for a child. So a lot of times when they were teaching whole language, children would just give up and stop learning to read because it was so frustrating for them. Let's go forward. So what is phonics? You may be curious to this. So phonics is basically breaking down sounds and letters. So here's my alphabet. I have A, but as a teacher, as a phonics teacher, I would teach them that this letter is A and it makes the A sound. I would also show them lowercase. I would show them uppercase and lowercase and show them that those two A's make the same sound. They say A. So let me give you the definition. Sorry, I'm backtracking here. Definitions of phonics is a method for teaching reading and writing of the English language, developing learners' phonemic awareness. So phonemic awareness is the ability to hear sounds, okay, and to break them down in their smallest forms. And so like I said, whole language was top down. Phonics is bottom up. So basically, if I was a reader, an early reader, and I came to this word cat, I would have the preset skills already because my teacher had taught me the alphabet. She taught me A was at, B was B, C was k, D was d. So I would have that knowledge prior to reading this word cat. So if I came across it, I would say, well, that's a C, that's an A, that's a T, and that would be cat, cat, cat. So I would throw all those together and make a word. Now, the difference between whole language is that I didn't have to ask a teacher what this word was. Whole language, you have to ask, you have to get assistance from a teacher or someone else. So I feel that phonics builds confidence. Whole language does not, because you need so much assistance with whole language. Phonics gives you skills. So moving along. Let's see. However, there are some exceptions to the rules of phonics. Phonics can be confusing because of the exceptions to the rule, like the silent K at the beginning of new, K-N-E-W. If I was an early reader, I'd read that canoe because my teacher told me K was K. So not the case, which can be confusing. So you have to learn, a lot of people call them rule breakers, or another one is like the silent E on words because kids want to pronounce them, or the word the, they want to spell it T-H-U instead of T-H-E. So they have to memorize some exceptions to the rule when you're learning phonics. However, so where does that leave us now? Well, now whole language and phonics is finally put together. However, I would state that phonics is definitely the most solid route to go when teaching because it gives them so many skills. Sorry, my PowerPoint is not being nice here. Oh no, apologize. So we'll just keep moving. So phonics is basically, you would do 95% phonics when teaching, and I would say 5% whole language. Reading is everything. If you can't read, you can't write. If you can't read, you can't get employment. If you can't write, you can't sign an application. So if you know someone who can't read or write, give them some help. Seek some help out. All right, this is Heather Doom checking out, and I hope you've learned a little bit about whole language versus phonics. So now we do both when we teach whole language and phonics, okay? But majority of it is phonics. Thank you. Have a great weekend.